Spartan. A little bit of background is I was at Blur Studio for a while, 4 years, and we had a kid and decided to try something else. So I thought it was a good time to try switching to games with the fidelity coming up in my background. I thought it was a cool jump. So I've been over there for going almost 2 years now, and everything is it's been an experience. I'm new to this whole demo thing, so bear with. I'll probably confuse you more, or myself more than you guys, but I think we can get through it. We covered some of the stuff that we're going to go through some of my images first, my background here. So most of these were used creating ZBrush, some a hybrid workflow. My background is a lot of poly modeling, but I'm merging more ZBrush in more and more over the years, now more than ever. And for instance, this character here was probably almost, actually all ZBrush. This was Dynamesh completely and then rendered. This did some VPRs, but this is actually a key shot, but actually it's a hybrid of the two, to be honest. And this guy's all ZBrush, my newer stuff, personal work. And I'll go through some of my professional work also. Another version of Batman here. And this worked great. I'm not going to demo it, but I think you've all seen it. Paul did with ZBrush. It's really amazing stuff, like how fast and how clean that is. I one-shotted it with no guides, and it was literally an animatable mesh, so it was pretty awesome. This is a design based on Carlos Fuentes sketch for Van Helsing years ago. It's all ZBrush. Some more renders. This is some old Blur work, and this has been more of a hybrid workflow. Obviously, this is a metal ray render, but the base, starting with a nice base mesh, and then obviously ZBrush out. And that's generally kind of my workflow right now. Is I still do a little bit of base mesh modeling and poly modeling, then I sculpt on top of it. But with ZBrush and everything, this year my goal was actually stay in ZBrush much more. Games allows me to do that. So I'm going to focus, you know, as I move nowadays and the new advancements and stuff like that. Just ZBrush lets me be so creative and up on the front end. So more to come on that this year. Here's a quick sketch, you know, all ZBrush, Dynamesh, quick render. Some more Blur work. And that's a hybrid max red. Like obviously, actually this character was based off of a scan and ZBrush detailed, and then textures, materials, all like V-Ray. Same thing, Joker here. It's in cinematic render. Good old some Mass Effect stuff I did for on the front. Lupo for Resident Evil. More Lupo. There's another. Yeah, these things aren't in order, so you're jumping all over the place. Smuggler for the Star Wars cinematic video for Bioware. That was awesome to work on. Anything Star Wars is always cool to get your hands on. It's for Render too for a nice contract. Some Witch King. This is a Ppr Render. This was interesting. I concept sculpted a lot of this, and then retopologized it. So all the shapes and stuff. I mean, this is retopologized mesh. This is over a year and a half ago. So, but I figured all the shapes out in ZBrush, and then retopologized, and then and actually reprojected some of the details also, and did some hybrid fiber mesh, you know, tucked into the rips and tears here on the bottom. I guess that's it for my examples. And then here I'll go over what I'm going to show you guys today too. Some pictures. So when a little bit of backstory. When I started this character for this I did this off this presentation, and I bit off a lot more than I could chew. I basically. Oh, whoops. See, I told you I was going to forget that.
Sorry for recording it.
So I started making this barbarian character, and I'll show this Pro button before so I can do some justice here. So I started out making this character this presentation, and I literally decided, like, let me push ZBrush as far as I can handle it. This thing, because of all the random fiber meshes, is 180 subtools, and it worked. And it's a little slow, but when I isolate it works like a champ, but I never expected to be able to have that freedom. I was really, really impressed with it. A lot of it was just for the variations with the fiber mesh and whatnot, but I just wanted to be able to split things off so I could use Noisemaker as much as possible. And it just gave me so much freedom. I didn't ever have to worry. In the past, I was kind of concerned of, like, what if I run out of room, or, you know, I kind of want to be able to subdivide this up. And now, I had to decimate it to get some decent Ppr renders out. This is decimated mesh, but still, I mean, there's a lot to ask for. There's a lot of stuff going on that. And I got some other renders of it too. This is some other shot. Front. And that's a key shot render I threw in there real quick, and that worked out real well with the ZBrush stuff. Well, it'll be on the PDF. This stuff's so boring to look at, I get it. I always, like, when I see presentations, I'm always like, just get in there and get, you know, I don't want to read all this stuff, but I kind of need it to keep track for my own self because I'll forget. So it's more for me than you guys, I think. But some of the key features I want to cover is like my overview of like how I use ZBrush at work, my general model processes, fiber mesh, how I use a lot in this. One thing I want to note, if you looked at what was listed, I think I was going to cover like transpose, UV master, and like Dynamesh. But as I started creating this, things just kind of came out more that I actually learned. Like I set out, I never really used fiber mesh prior to this, so I started attacking that, and I'm like, it just makes sense for me to talk about it. And also Noisemaker. There's a lot of really random cool stuff you can do in Noisemaker for surface details. And also where you can either, you don't even have to bake it down, a lot of people bake it down, but you can use it essentially as a fancy like, you know, bump map basically. And sometimes it gives you a better result actually. And then I figured I'll wrap it up at the end with like some detailed sculpting on the face. I think I relate most to you guys out there as more of a ZBrush layman. I mean, a lot of it's technique, but I don't have anything. I don't have any setup or processes that I think are incredibly fancy. I love watching all these other guys. It's really inspirational of how to do things a lot easier. My background a lot was doing like at Blur, we had to do a lot of structure-based hard topology, and at the end we could use ZBrush to, you know, put details in, wrinkles. But this was years ago. Now that's changing. So ZBrush, even at the end of my days of Blur, I was starting to use way more up front. Using it for concept sculpting, and then retopologizing over that. And as I go more and more, and I switch over to games, now I have a lot more freedom than I ever have up front, because I can do whatever I need to as long as I bake down for my normal. So it's really exciting, and my workflow is constantly changing. I mean, every couple of months I'm doing things differently. So and ZBrush has actually, you know, made my life so much easier in that regard. So that's pretty much all the boring stuff. Oh, and I guess in the detailed sculpting phase, I want to talk about like, I pretty much use everything in ZBrush. I don't really find the need to have to go explore for alphas or anything anymore. Between the Noisemaker, the alphas already in ZBrush, the scatter brushes, I can pretty much create every surface detail I've ever really needed recently. There's nothing wrong with doing that, by the way. There's a million ways to skin a cat, so don't really think that. Just a different approach. So I guess I'll start with the head here, and I'll bring him in. I'll load the rest of the mesh later, but it's so heavy I'd rather just keep with this. And so when I started this, I was like, well, I want to do hair, and I've done it fiber mesh for like little things here and there, but I wanted to do something with like, you know, more robust look and everything on there. So, oops. So let me just isolate some areas out, and we'll do some fiber mesh with it. It's kind of funny, when I was looking at this at work, we started joking around about it. Like, I don't know how it kind of happened with the hair, especially. It kind of looks like a cross between Nathan Explosion, Metalocalypse, Rob Zombie, and then maybe even Lobo without the beard anyhow. But it's funny, when you hide the hair, it just looks kind of like a totally different character. So, and my breaks, there's a lot of subtools here. The reason I do that is the fiber mesh, I don't like to do one big, you know, crazy hairdo. I like to keep it real simple. So what I do is I just make pieces at a time, and then I just duplicate them and move them around, propagate them to the head, and I give it to, it gives me more control, and it's pretty simple. And then you can save them out, and then you can mix them. You can mix like longer, thicker hair, thinner hair, shorter hair, and then with it, and when you do with the render and stuff like that, it actually breaks it all up. Especially for this guy, since it's kind of ruffled, greasy, thick hair, and it's a little bit stylized, I kind of get away with that, and it gave me a lot of freedom. Realistic, you'll probably need a lot more. I have like thicker strands, and then also when you render with fiber mesh with the Ppr settings, you have a lot of control in that end too. some eyebrows on here. So normally what I'll do here is I'll just maybe make a patch like this. And here's what I'll do. I have some saved off, but I'll actually show you guys what I started with that are inside ZBrush. I really like this guy here. Check out that sweet hipster haircut there. Now, obviously realistic hair, like the actual max fibers come in really, really handy because the more the merrier in that sense. But like I said, I want to go a little bit stylized, so I like it a little bit thicker. So take the count down, even the length can be a little less, maybe go a little longer. Coverage, even that down, thicker rather. And this is pretty cool too because you, the width monitor, like this is what I do. So with the curve, you can see how now it's thin at the top and thicker at the middle and then thin again. I think that literally lends itself to some cool look there. I mean, you can make it just as thick at the top if you like, but I like some variation. And it's twisting a lot down here. It's usually from the revolve, which is something you want, but you don't always want a lot of it. Gravity has a lot to do with it too. Whoa. What's that?
That's when he got out of the shower.
Yeah, there you go. And let me see here. Revolve rate. There we go. That's getting more straight, which is kind of what we want a little bit of. We want it a little disheveled, but I still think there's a lot right there. Of course, you know every time you change this, it updates on the fly. So maybe put a numerical input in there and see a little touch of it. But anyways, that's probably enough for what I need. I'm probably going a little bit overboard, so I can mash it around once I accept it. And here's some, I'll go over these Ppr settings to help with renders. The tip and root anisotropic, right? That's what it's called? Yeah. I find for shorter hair, a lower number looks better. For longer hair, it definitely gives that more realistic shading technique. And that really comes into play with the Ppr. We can actually, let me see, we can test that really quick. For a quick Ppr, I usually like, it's a little bit longer, but I think it's worth it. I really prefer these settings. You can throw as much as you want to it, but I like putting about raise at 100 and usually the shadows or the angle at about 7. And then I got to turn on the AO actually. And let's turn our filter while we're at it actually. Sharpen filter. Accept this hair so we can mess with it. Shouldn't take too long, maybe a minute. Not even that, it should take less than that. This is good to know. So I'll do this now instead of trying to render when we have a bunch of them on here, because that's just going to drive me nuts. Sitting waiting and staring at this crazy hairdo. So that anisotropy comes into play. I think right here, so you get a change and it actually influences itself to the hair, makes it look pretty good. So let's. Now here's an interesting thing, and I was talking to Paul last night about it. They have a lot of groom brushes, but what I actually tend to do is just use the standard move. Where'd that go? Shift this around where I want it. here's something more noteworthy. So when you come in here, right? No, with fiber mesh, auto mask fiber mesh is always on. So whenever you do that, you can't, like it'll keep the root where it needs to be, which is, you know, you kind of want that, otherwise you'll move it around, but not always. So sometimes whenever I duplicate this over, I don't want the root to be there. I want to be able to shift the hair around. But for starting reasons, it's good to have. It's good to know both. So I'll leave it on for now, because that way I can actually push off and it won't pull the roots, you know, out of the hair, off the scalp too much. So you can kind of get that, like, this little woof down here. Here's the other thing too, is like when you want to get really, really down to it, if you really want fine control, the move to, like this is, you know, I wouldn't do this at this stage, but it's good to note. Like if I wanted some strands over his face, you know, you can just come in on the move topology brush, so it's only grabbing one, so you're actually just pulling verts. And you don't have to worry about the segment things, you know, if you're going to stay in ZBrush, the segment thing doesn't really matter because render with the Ppr things will actually make it smooth, so you don't have to stress it too much. It's food for thought though, if you're going to actually export this in another program, realize that, that you will get those facets. This is just going to be a generated piece of topology at that point. But there's two ways you can handle that. What I did when I rendered the T-shot, I ran into that problem. So what I did is I took it to, naturally, it may be a workaround in ZBrush, but naturally if you subdivide it, it actually will shrink the edges. You can do the SMT and actually, but that'll keep you the facets. You don't really want to do that. I actually took it to another program, used their subdivision, and it cleaned it up. But that was for rendering. Inside of ZBrush, you don't have to worry about that unless you collapse your subtools fiber meshes down, and then when you combine, they become one subtool, and you lose some of those VPR settings. But that's not always bad either, because more often than not, I will actually make a bunch of fiber meshes, and then I found that collapsing them and actually treating like geo inside of the rendered Ppr fiber meshes, having just regular piece of geo in there, it made things look very wiry, and that may be a desired look. It looks really good for him, I thought, and you can see that in the renders previous. Is that like there's probably in all of his hair, there's I'd say about a good quarter or a third of it is actually just collapsed, merged fiber meshes into their subtool. So it renders like regular geometry, and then obviously the other hairs get the VPR, and it's just an interesting effect I found. So that's good enough for that, so I can duplicate it, move it. Now remember what I said before about that brush? Which is keep me handy. I could want to do some crazy, I don't know why I never want to do that, but, you know, the rooster tail, like crazy hair thing, but you can go right back into the brush, auto mask fiber mesh, and now you can actually move this around, rotate it to your liking. And you can just go back down and move the brush if you like. Turn this off again. I'll let it turn back on. Let's duplicate it again. I made this kind of heavy, but I would have to do less hair passes. And the other one I made them kind of thin, so they got all wiry between each other. But this still, for demonstration purposes, works fine. I wish I want to get this one actually a little bit more over center. I want to keep it to the head, obviously, because it'll kind of strange. Alright, that's cool for that. Let me do another, let's pull this nice little solo. Let's do another, load in another one. Now I have some random ones here, bear with, I don't know which ones they're going to be, but I have some saved out. Let's take a stab at 30. I have no idea what we're going to get here. Okay, that's not definitely what we want. That's very short. But I can stretch that out. It's just, you know, these are just random ones. And then you can change the modifiers at any time. Let's do that. Let's just stick with that. Let's make the length. Gravity down. Or wait, what's wrong with it? That's looking pretty disheveled. You're getting that breakup, but again, that's with the twist down here. The revolve rate, rather. Let's make it thin. Solo mode, let's get out of that. And then, so you're getting that nice contrast now. Now these are a little thick. Mind you, I probably would have done that, but I think you guys can see. But these little hairs can be really effective hanging over the eye for character-wise to just give the character some essence, like what's even The one shortcoming when I set out to do this, it got a little out of hand, but I wanted to create like a nice battle shout, a nice cool action pose, but I just didn't have time. It got so complex, I just ran out of time, so I kind of had to do a little bit of a middle grade easy pose with the arms down, like forward kind of deal. But initially I was really wanted like a battle rage, like scream. I should have just, I just went a little too overboard, and I had to focus on what I had. So I still think he came out really cool. It just could, everything can always be better. That's what I say. I mean, one thing I learned early on is like a piece of art is never done, it's just do. And you have so much time to get something done, you do the best you can. I don't think there's ever a piece that I've done where I can look at the final thing and be like, that's everything I wanted it to be. You know, it's very hard for me. A lot of times when I pull my pieces, I look at like, oh dude, I should have hit that, I changed that. It's like, I focus on that and I kind of lose perspective. But I think that's a mark of a good artist. You always make better, you know, or grow. You know? But anyways, it's just a quick. Do like a quick. It's curious to see how the Ppr Render is, to be honest with you. But it takes a while, I'll bounce out of it. The hair is kind of dark too. I might want to change that, but it works good in contrast to them. But you can see, obviously, because it's dark, the shadows are going to be. You're not going to see them as well. But
while it's ready, you want to take a question? If there's a question out there.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, there's people here, Jason.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're not in your room sculpting. Okay, you're doing a presentation. Does anybody have a question out here at all? Oh, here we go. My man, I'm going to give you the mic.
Do you ever use broom brushes or like a clipping brush or anything like that?
That's what I was just talking to Paul last night about this. They're awesome to use, but and they are handy. I do use them from time to time. The reason I like to work in like clumps and juice and expect this is if I was going to do like a woman's hair or something style with all the hair in one way, they would work perfect. I stayed away from it on this end because I want the disheveled like look of what it's giving me to make this. So I prefer to get that nice fire mesh created and then position it to where I like it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with using broom brushes. They work great. In fact, Paul was telling me last night there's some stuff with the adjustments, so you can actually, they're not as brutal. You can actually grab and pull and clean model.
Yeah, if you want to open the brush palette so I can see it. And then fiber mesh. Oh, you just passed it up. Yep, right there. Yep, right there.
Oh, right there.
There you go. So you see this preserved length? So I was telling Jason that I actually also use the move brush a ton, but I turn that up all the way. And when that tells ZBrush is you are using actually that brush on fibers. So when Jason's pulling this, if he took his hair and started pulling, he could pull it all the way out here. If he turned that slider all the way up, you'll never be able to do that. It'll preserve the length of the whole fiber.
So that's really good to know. Like sometimes I like to be able to move it like that, but be able to lock that down like for a length can be incredibly handy.
I had a question on the fiber mesh. What other uses do you have, and also how does it affect with the Ppr renders?
How does the fiber mesh affect the Ppr renders, and how do I use it outside of ZBrush? Is that what you're asking? Well, it depends on what the project scope is. Like, actually, you can actually get curves out of here, correct? The splines.
Yeah, you can export the fibers all as curve guides.
It's interesting. It's a really good question. Because usually I do a lot of ZBrush and I do a lot of rendering outside of ZBrush. But I like to do still. Ppr has some really interesting effects that I like to use, and it just looks kind of cool. So I've been using it more and more often. But yeah, you can still export the curves, and you can still.
You can use it for grass. You can use it for flowers.
Oh, dude, yeah.
For leaves. It's whatever. It's not just for hair or fur. You can use it many different ways. You can build fibers and micro mesh it as well. You put geometry along the fibers.
Yeah, so you could technically you can make like a tree branch and then do fiber mesh on top of that. You know, and there's been some really cool. Actually, some really clever stuff kids have done with that. All right, let me do something. I'm not gonna bore you too much with this. So do some more.
We got another question. You're hot now. You're hot now.
I wanted to ask you, how would you make braids? Would you use this technique to make braids?
Oh, braids.
Braid brushes.
Yeah, I have to admit that's pretty complex. Do you have any input on that? Usually.
Sure. I get this one a lot. You want me to take this one?
Yeah, go for it.
Right.
Honestly,
I'm taking over Jason's demo. Braids are a tough one. So what I would do, and usually I tell people, is number one, I'd probably use micro mesh. Right? I'd create one. I would use the fibers with very big coverage. Put that where I want the braids, and then just swap out the micro mesh. Swap out the fibers with micro mesh, and you'll have braids. Or you could use a piece of geometry, make a twist in the geometry, have the fibers come out, and then can you go to the fiber mesh section and tool palette? Okay, so you see this H tangent and B tangent? That's telling the fibers to go along vertical or horizontal tangents, and you're telling it to change it. So you can play with that a little bit. If you do a spiral, and then the mesh will just look out, and you can kind of see the spiral. If you start playing with the vertical tangents, the fibers will start trying to wrap a little bit more around the mesh. And then I would hit it with a brush real quick, and then save that. I can use it as a micro mesh or stuff like that. The braid, though, that's a difficult thing. I would totally do micro mesh for that. What do you want? Tri-parts? Yes. You mean the brush tri-parts? Yes, you could do that as well. They're saying you can make a brush with tri-parts. And then so you make an end port, make a braid in the middle, and different at the end, and the brush will draw it out.
Anything else here? I'm going to give this guy a sweet stash. One of these other ones I use here probably work better for this because it's already set up. There you go, check that out. It's a little thick, but that might be something you want. You never know. I'm trying to make it match up a little bit. And here's a good way for me to demo the this BPR settings, so I can show you before. Because this actually really comes in handy. Because it's set to 75. Usually on short hair, I'll render and show you the difference. Gravity might help on that too, also to push the hair off the upper lip.